Yeah, I think we are good to go for our session 2, which is the future of Hong Kong as an Asia financial hub. Yeah, thank you for everyone for attending here. We will have 3 speakers. The first one will be Fred McMahon from the Fraser Institute. The second one will be Ed Chin, who is the former hedge fund manager from Hong Kong. The third one is Anne, the chair from Visual Artists Guild.
Once again, my name is Ed Chin. I'm one of the organizers for today's event. Let me introduce Dr. Fred McMahon to you. He is the Dr. Michael A. Walker Research Chair in Economic Research at Fraser Institute in Canada. He manages the Economic Freedom of the World Network, an alliance of think tanks in nearly 100 nations and territories. The network produces the Economic Freedom of the World Report, an annual study that ranks nations on economic liberty. He is co-author of the Human Freedom Index, a joint Fraser-Cato Institute project, and the Economic Freedom of North America. He has worked on economic reform programs in 24 nations and has authored several books and many articles on economic development, both academic and in the popular media. His book, Looking the Gift Horse in the Mouth, about damaging government intervention and spending, won the International Sir Anthony Fisher Memorial Award. Please welcome Fred McMahon.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and more importantly, thank you for your role in organizing this. And I'd also like to extend my thanks as well to Ann Lau, who's been my principal contact. I'd also like to thank everyone who is here. It takes courage to attend an event like this. The long arm of the mainland China is everywhere. We're having a little bit of a problem, so now you'll get to see the current slide in large and the next slide in small. It's not the way it's showing up on my computer screen, but I don't think that's going to be a huge problem. Hong Kong has experienced a dramatic decline in the rule of law from 2018 to 2021. Unfortunately, comprehensive data is only available to 2021. So the decline will have been much more severe as new data comes in. Basically, we get a year and a bit of the national security law. That's just an appetizer for China. I'm sure the mainland, the CCP, will attempt for the main course to gobble up the remaining freedoms and adherence to the rule of law in China as time goes on. As was noted, the exodus has already begun. There are 8.4% fewer regional headquarters in China, in Hong Kong now than there were in 2019, and that doesn't even count the silent exodus. There's been a 30% decline in employment in regional centers. That means a lot of these regional centers are becoming ghost centers. That may be where the official office is, but it's not where the work is being done. Most of the effective regional offices, of course, are fleeing to Singapore. As was also noted, China does not respect the rule of law. It is only restrained by its self-interest. Violating the rule of law is no problem at all. So no one is protected by the rule of law if the CCP decides it would gain by condemning the innocent, whether individual or corporate. But it's also been noted it's not just the rule of law that should be of concern to investors and businesses. The clampdown on freedom without the protection of the rule of law in Hong Kong adds an extra layer of personal uncertainty and threat, creates the fear of arbitrary arrest, expulsion, effective appropriation of property. Seen this on the mainland, and we're already beginning to see it, as I'll show later on, in Hong Kong. I manage the Fraser Institute's Economic Freedom of the World project and co-author the Human Freedom Index, which we co-publish with the Cato Institute. We use data from a myriad of sources, all third-party data, so our bubble and our subjective views do not color the outcome. These are some of the data sources that we use to get a comprehensive measure of economic freedom and overall personal freedom. So I'm going to start, this is going to be a data-heavy presentation, not a conceptual presentation. I'm going to start with the data from the economic freedom of the world. This is our composite measure of the rule of law. On your left is the actual score out of 10, and on the right is Hong Kong's rank. And as you can see, since 2018 to 2021, there's been a significant decline both in Hong Kong's score and Hong Kong's rank in the composite measure of the rule of law. Now, these are nations above and below Hong Kong in the rule of law. It still looks like a pretty good neighborhood, but it's the magnitude of the decline which is going to continue, which is startling. Hong Kong had by far the largest decline in the rule of law of any of the 165 jurisdictions we measure in the Economic Freedom Index. Incredibly, its decline was 60% greater than Myanmar's decline over the same period, and I'm sure you know what's going on in Myanmar, 80% greater than Nicaragua's decline. And there, a regime is asserting dictatorial control like never before. Hong Kong's decline was 5 times the world average, and Hong Kong's gap with Singapore has quadrupled since 2018 to 2021. Now, I'm going to show you a number of slides where there will be differences in magnitude. That's because they're measuring different things, sometimes with different measuring methodologies. But there is one thing consistent and clear and absolute in all these measurements, and that is a powerful decline of the rule of law and freedom in Hong Kong to 2021, and that's just the beginning. So this is Hong Kong judicial independence, same pattern that you saw before. A significant decline both in score and in rank. Still a fairly respectable neighborhood, but the other neighbors are going to remain stable while Hong Kong is going to decline further. The bottom line, by the way, shows you comparatively China's rank, and unfortunately, the powerful gravity of Beijing is pulling Hong Kong down to the suppression of the rule of law and freedom, slowly towards the CCP level. Military interference in the rule of law, you can see a downturn at about the time of the handover of Hong Kong to China when people were suspicious of the mainland intentions. Now that those suspicions have turned into reality, it's declining again, and it will certainly go below what it was right after the handover. Here again is the rank, and now Hong Kong's in a pretty nasty neighborhood. Military interference ranking with Guatemala, Malawi, Tanzania. Places that just a few years ago one would never have compared to Hong Kong's rule of law. Legal integrity down to 62nd, and the neighborhood just keeps getting nastier. Imagine Hong Kong with less integrity in its rule of law system than Saudi Arabia or Malawi. Now I'm going to turn to the Human Freedom Index. This is a broader measure of the rule of law. The Economic Freedom Index focuses on economic law, not exclusively, but that's the focus. So this is our composite measure of the rule of law in Hong Kong. And you can see that Hong Kong's score has declined substantially, but even more substantially, its ranking. So now out of 165 nations, it ranks 51st in rule of law. Again, not the world's greatest neighborhood. Hong Kong below the Bahamas, below Guinea-Bissau, below Timor-Leste in the rule of law. Again, who would have thought that that would even be possible just a few years before? Procedural justice, huge decline in both score and rank. And again, not a particularly pleasant neighborhood to be in. Hong Kong civil justice, this has declined less, and I think that's perhaps because if you have a civil dispute that doesn't involve the government or powerful interests, even dictatorships can sometimes provide appropriate arbitration. It goes bad, of course, when the state or state actors are involved. So Hong Kong in this area has declined significantly, but still in an all right neighborhood. VDEM, Varieties of Democracy, is one of the most respected measures of freedom in the world, and it has the gloomiest picture of Hong Kong, showing that Hong Kong's rank in our index, when we convert the score to our measure, pushes Hong Kong down to 101st in the world in rule of law. They may be projecting into the future because this is far worse than the other measures that we look at, but I think it will come true. So where is Hong Kong? It now has the neighbors of Papua New Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Nigeria. The neighborhood keeps getting worse. It's not just the deteriorating rule of law that threatens business in Hong Kong. In overall personal freedom, Hong Kong has the worst decline in the world after Myanmar. And as mentioned before, this is a threat to business because information can't be passed freely. Information is one of the fuels of business. It means you can't get good analysis. This is a striking example. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll mention the first and one other. Paul Harris, former chairman of the Hong Kong Bar Association, criticized the national security law. Beijing accused him of being in the service of foreign agents, particularly the British. He was picked up by the police. This is the former chair of the Hong Kong Bar Association, picked up by the police for questioning and fled Hong Kong just hours later. Financial analysts in Hong Kong have started to use clandestine communications, including burner phones, because if they say something negative about a state firm or the Chinese economy, bad things will happen to them, so they have to hide it. This is very bad for business and investors when financial analysts can't talk honestly. And it's not just financial analysts, executives, people in the business itself can't make honest assessments. So here's Hong Kong's personal freedom decline. This is the composite one, and this is far worse than the rule of law. I think the rule of law will catch up on the downhill, but Hong Kong has gone from, believe it or not, first in the world in personal freedom. This is a measure of personal freedom, not democracy. These are two separate things, as Isaiah Berlin argued long ago. Hong Kong went from second or first in personal freedom in the world to 82nd now. That's an incredible, horrible decline. And there are Hong Kong's neighbors in the list. Hong Kong civil society repression, 148th out of 165 jurisdictions. There's the neighborhood. Hong Kong is almost as bad as Algeria and worse than Tajikistan. Hong Kong Assembly and Civil Association, I only have ranks for a few years because we didn't have enough data to do fair ranks before that. 146th out of 165. Again, a rather nasty neighborhood. Hong Kong government censorship effort. This is not going to surprise anyone. Hong Kong is rapidly sinking to the mainland's level of censorship. Internet censorship, same thing. Harassment of journalists. This is a little bit of a surprise. It actually ranks Hong Kong worse than China. That may be because people have higher expectations of Hong Kong than of China, but it certainly shows you the powerful deterioration and the harassment of journalists in Hong Kong. We heard about the arrest at the airport of an Apple writer. We know about Jimmy Lee. I mean, this is a disaster for Hong Kong, and not just for personal freedom, but for business too, because business needs information. Freedom of media and expression, VDEM again, way down. I'm speeding up now, so we'll go through this quickly without much explanation. Freedom of expression and information composite, 110th in the world, very nasty neighborhood. Hong Kong, freedom from torture. International observers are now worried about torture in Hong Kong. Incredible. And again, an unpleasant neighborhood, disappearances, conflicts, and terrorism. Religious organizations, this is not going to be too much of a surprise, but it's still incredible the level of suppression the mainland is forcing on Hong Kong in all aspects of human freedom. Religion overall, freedom of religion composite, 117th out of our 165 districts. So I've run through the data very quickly. It's frightening, but not nearly as frightening as you will see in the data next year when we have 2022 data, and not nearly as frightening as you will see when we have 2023 data. So thank you very much for your patience. Thank you for the invitation. I am so honored to be here.
Thank you, Fred. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Edward C.K. Chin. Ed has had a long career in hedge funds and financial media. He has held leadership positions at regulated asset management firms in Hong Kong. He was formerly the country manager of Man Investment, a UK publicly traded hedge fund company, the largest of its kind measured by asset under management. In response to the enactment of the National Security Law, NSL, in Hong Kong in 2020, Ed maintains and operates a social media platform, continuing to tell the true story of Hong Kong. His ongoing project includes the Global Prayer Movement for Hong Kong and the World Hong Kong Forum. Please welcome Ed Chin.
Thank you, Anne. Okay. Are we live right now? Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming over to this forum. It's more interesting sometimes to go to the protest downstairs, but you know, we are all wearing suits and ties and whatnot. But and actually, some of the people who went down for a protest, they are here. So welcome. Now, this is not too much about data that we will be sharing, as Fred already did a lot of that work. Me as a market practitioner, in the next 19 minutes or so, I'm just going to share with you about how I feel about Hong Kong. So by picking up this topic, I'm very careful, because as Ann Lau alluded to earlier, I organized this coming year, meaning 2024, will be the third year we organize the World Hong Kong Forum. And we want actually the forum to be conducted in Hong Kong someday, not outside of Hong Kong. Year one, year two in Toronto, Canada. But third year, if things change, why not Hong Kong, since we all want to tell the true Hong Kong story. I come from a financial radio broadcasting background first, and then I switched into asset management. I do global long short and North American long short. And then when I relocate back to Hong Kong, I joined a UK listed company called Man Investments, as Anne already mentioned. But these days, high-frequency trading kind of become more important than global macro or long short. But today, the story goes like this, and I guess Stanley or Ken can help me do the slide. I have 20, 30 slides to share in supersonic speed. Let's go through some of them, right? So this is the 2019 protest, Fight for Freedom, Stand with Hong Kong. Next slide. This is before 2019. This is 2014, when we have Occupy Central / the Umbrella Movement. This is outside of Hong Kong, near the entertainment building. We have Anson Chan, Jimmy Lai, Martin Lee, and Benny Tai. That was, I think, in 2019 when Jimmy talked about press freedom in the second quarter of 2019, before the extradition bill was finally retracted. Keep going. We had the Taiwan election, next slide, and also coming Taiwan election on January 13th. How many of you will be going to Taiwan? Maybe Jackie. So he is so close to Hong Kong now. Very liquid. Keep going. Now, this lower level spokesperson from mainland Chinese Foreign Ministry says on June 30th, 2017, saying the Sino-British Joint Declaration on Hong Kong no longer has any realistic meaning. So that's what they say. And then people keep pulling out of Hong Kong because of all the nasty things that these CCP spokespersons say. Well, I got 1 minute left, right? So keep hope alive. What does that mean? I think some of the freedom fighters might die in prison if we don't voice out. So having a conference like this, it matters. Having protests down the streets, it matters. And trying to organize a World Hong Kong Forum in Hong Kong, bringing business delegates from Canada, US, and talk to a totalitarian regime and say, you know, whether we could have a prisoner swap of sorts, less sanction if you set someone free, you know, just like what happened to the blind lawyer under Hillary Clinton, Chen Guangxing, right? So it's kind of a swap. The two Michaels is a swap. Can we swap someone from Hong Kong? This is, honestly, Hong Kong people are silenced. Now, I know Jackie cannot say much because he's visiting, but the whole atmosphere is kind of different now. Even when we do shows, we try to, in Cantonese, it's 就住就住. That means, you know, we have to be very, very careful about what we say to be correct, not just politically correct. But I really wish, because all those people who are in prison, I think I know 70% of them, of the 200 that are detained. So it breaks my heart to see like a Joshua, who is like 26 now. Would he be like another Panchen Lama? Panchen Lama was arrested when he was 6. He must be 40 by now. They don't just arrest the Panchen Lama, but also his parents as well. So we don't want to see that in Hong Kong. We don't want to see this extreme makeover, but we just have to do whatever it takes to make Hong Kong hopefully great again and to set the political prisoners free. And let me introduce the next speaker, actually. Ann Lau is the initiator of the ABC, assessing business risk in China and Hong Kong, also one of the organizers. She is the chair of Visual Arts Guild, a non-government organization which was established in 1985 with the mission to champion the right of freedom of speech and expression. Before she retired, Anne had worked for technology companies before starting her own technology company. In 1997, Anne led a team to Hong Kong and produced a documentary called Hong Kong in Transition. So please welcome Anne and also talk to her afterwards.
The miracle of Hong Kong. Don't let the national security law ruin Hong Kong. Next. Allow me to take us back when the bamboo curtain fell. At that time, my parents had the foresight to bring our family from China to Hong Kong. One of my earliest memories was walking to school every day with my older sister. From there, we walked towards the end of the street, where the British compound was. Then we started walking up the hill. On the top of the hill, we could see the valley below. Across the valley was a mountain where my school was. It was ran by American nuns. On the other side of the hill was a Catholic church. Spread all over the valley and the hills were scattered shacks made of wood planks and cardboards. These were the beginning of the shanty town. Every few days, there seemed to be more and more of these shacks until eventually it became a full-fledged shanty town. Actually, many of these shanty towns were established in Hong Kong around the time, especially because of the influx of refugees. Next. Hong Kong under the British. Hong Kong became a safe haven for millions of Chinese escaping the communists. They formed the backbone of Hong Kong's rise to global financial center. The British policy of laissez-faire fit perfectly with what Fraser Institute considered as the Economic Freedoms Index, which is low taxes, few regulations, and the rule of law, which is under the British common law. And, of course, with the spirit of the people. The constant influx of refugees not only provided the labor required, but they also brought with them the know-how necessary for businesses. By the mid-1960s, Hong Kong became one of the Asian tigers, together with Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. Next. Let's take a look at the population of Hong Kong. You can see that from 1950 to 55, there's a big increase of population. Then it reduces around this time because of the Cultural Revolution, and it also affected Hong Kong at that time. And if you look at here, this is about 1997. That's when 1 million of people left Hong Kong before and around that time. So, but due to China's constant political turmoil and central planning, China was on the verge of economic collapse by the late 1970s. By 1979, China opened up several economic zones and invited investors to build factories and open businesses. The same Chinese who years before escaped to Hong Kong returned to China to eventually help China to become the #2 economy of today. Next, one country, two system. While the island of Hong Kong and the peninsula of Kowloon were ceded to the British, the rest of Hong Kong was under a 99-year lease. It was in 1980s that the agreement of one country, two system was formulated. Hong Kong's capitalist system was to remain unchanged for 50 years, and Hong Kong people will rule Hong Kong. There was also the promise of universal suffrage for the election of the chief executive and the legislators. That hope was that Hong Kong would change China. Unfortunately, that hope was shattered in 1989 with the Tiananmen Massacre acts. Next. Hong Kong after 1997. Next. One country, two systems. In 1997, the sovereignty of the entire Hong Kong was formally turned over to China. Over 1 million people, like I showed you earlier with the graph, left Hong Kong before and after 1997. However, China's continued the economic liberalization. Confidence returned to Hong Kong. The political climate in Hong Kong kept to the promise of one country, two systems. Many who left Hong Kong actually returned, and after gaining their permanent residency in foreign countries, and Hong Kong continued to grow. Next. The 2014 umbrella movement. Ed shortly before has explained to what he's participated in 2014 with the umbrella movement. The umbrella movement itself, which started with a civil disobedience inspired by Occupy Wall Street. It was a civil disobedience of teach-ins, sit-ins. When the police used the tear gas and pepper spray against the peaceful protesters, then they had to use umbrellas to shield themselves. That's why it was called the umbrella movement. Still, after 79 days of protests, the dream of universal suffrage shattered. 2019, next, proposed Hong Kong extradition law. The extradition bill would allow Hong Kong to transfer trials to China. It was the fear of subjecting Hong Kong residents to China jurisdiction. Businesses' fear of Hong Kong's economic crimes would apply in Hong Kong. Peaceful protesters of 1 million or even 2 million participated. And because the young people from 5 years ago at the umbrella movement, they saw this another opportunity to push for universal suffrage. Next. The day that changed Hong Kong forever. July 21, 2019, Yuen Long Station attack. When white-clad armed Hong Kong mafia, known as the Triads, waited at the rural Yulon metro station for the returning protesters from the day of protests. The Triads indiscriminately attacked the people getting off the station. Videos show police standing by without interfering. Video also showed a pro-Beijing legislator shaking hands with a white-clad member. Hong Kong police, next. What is so sad from this is that Hong Kong police used to be noted as being Asia's finest. Yet, in 2019, from May to September and November, the trust in police fell from 6.5% to 48.3% that do not totally distrust the Hong Kong police. Hong Kong 2020, Hong Kong National Security Law. On June 30th, as Ed previously mentioned, China imposed a national security law on Hong Kong. Much of us here has been covered before. Next, regarding the Hong Kong National Security Law. I just want to point out one case of the Minsk group. This Minsk group is a consulting company that was raided in China, and the employees in China was detained. Yet, all the employees in Hong Kong, they secretly actually created a fake conference in Taiwan and secretly got them to Taiwan to pretend that they were meeting for a conference. From Taiwan, they shipped all the employees, the Minsk group, to Singapore. That would not have happened before the national security law. And because of the national security law, they were so afraid that any detention of the employees in China would have affected the employees in Hong Kong. Next. Hong Kong, after the implementation of national security law. This has been covered mostly by Fred already. Probably I just want to point out that 48% plan to leave Hong Kong medium in the long range. And also, 42% were pessimistic about business prospects. And also, 45% felt that the national security law will affect Hong Kong's standing as financial center. Next. If you look at this graph, you can see that here, 60 billion of investment, venture capital investment in 2018, down to less than 20 billion in 2022. And in the first half of 2023, it was probably less than 5 billion. The dramatic decrease of investment for venture capital in Hong Kong was so dramatic that everybody has to worry about it. Challenge to the APEC CEO. This is my challenge to APEC CEO. They are practically next door to us. I want them to recognize the elephant in the room, that there is a Hong Kong who is dying, and they need to recognize that. Next. Next. Why did Hong Kong succeed? The miracle of Hong Kong is the indomitable spirit of the Hong Kong people. The blood, sweat, and tears of generations of Hong Kong people. Their great-grandparents, their grandparents, their parents, themselves, they were the ones that built up Hong Kong. We are asking the CEO next door, stand up for the people of Hong Kong. You owe them that much. Tell Hong Kong authorities, restore confidence in the rule of law, restore confidence in the police, restore confidence in the judiciary, restore the freedom of the press, restore the freedom of the speech. Learn from the mistakes of the China zero COVID policy. Don't wait for 3 years from now and then regret that you have not done enough to change the course of history. I'd like to end this by sharing with you what has been said by Deng Xiaoping when he explained to Margaret Thatcher what is one country system. And he said, horses are still running, stocks still trading, dancers still dancing. 馬照跑，股照炒，舞照跳. Thank you.
Okay, maybe don't leave yet. We have 5 minutes of Q&A, and please take a seat, and also Fred. So anything from the floor in English and also our Cantonese language? Yes.
The point you were making earlier about Tibet and Hong Kong, sounds like you've read the book by Ho-Fung Hung called Hong Kong City on the Edge. Hong Kong City on the Edge by Hung, H-U-N-G. He's a professor back east. And he made the point that the the gradual transition to the present day conditions in Hong Kong show a parallel with the way the Communist Party handled Tibet between 1950 and 1959. So I won't go on and on about that, but it's a very interesting set of comparisons that he made. And I recommend the book to anybody who wants to read about how the Communist Party's tactics in taking over a territory have not changed.
So it's a comment. So anyone?
Thank you. This is a question for any of the panelists. I'm curious, very curious, as to to use an American expression, the word on the street in Hong Kong. In the West, we talk about what the gentlelady was saying, restore freedom of speech, restore faith in the police. That's what the outside perspective of Hong Kong, that things are getting bad. It's just being absorbed by the PRC. But again, the word on the street, the common man on the street in Hong Kong, are these messages salient? Are these what, the typical man, woman in Hong Kong are saying, or is this a bit more esoteric? Be very curious. Thank you.
Well, maybe Anne can jump in later, and also Fred. Now, I still have relatives and family in Hong Kong. And then just like most people in the diaspora community, not everyone might have left altogether, right? So it's, we have to be very careful about what we say. So I could also go down to the street and protest with Anna Kwok and the others, right? But then, like the way we say it is, hey, this is not the real one country, two systems that is prescribed in the basic law. So we as finance professionals and those who sent a letter to Xi Jinping back in 2014, it's still the same thing we want to say: restore the basic law and get rid of the NSL. I mean, the basic law is good enough. But of course, Article 23 is also coming in a few months' time, or even before the end of the year. So on the one side, the blue camp, meaning those who are pro-Beijing, they are also moving their assets. And those that I am very close with, they say that they will only keep 5 to 7% of their total assets in Hong Kong. The rest is overseas. So that's why you see the real estate market is also tumbling. It's like, it is bad. And whatever Paul Chan, the financial secretary, was saying 2 days ago, and I still think he is in San Francisco with his boss, right, Xi Jinping. But those, whatever they say, I don't think they represent the common people in Hong Kong, the middle class, the upper middle class, or even the tycoons. The tycoons are leaving. Li Ka-shing's jurisdiction actually has been formed in the Cayman Islands many years ago, and you could check with the Chinese or Hong Kong journalists here. They know. We have a few finance reporters here as well. So please mingle with them. Maybe Anne, you want to say a few things? Or Fred.
I'm not going to go because that was a comprehensive, good answer. I just wanted to make a footnote to my presentation. We keep referring to the Chinese Communist Party. It has no relationship to traditional communism. The only communist state left on the planet is possibly Cuba. It does match perfectly with fascism, however. It is a fascist regime, not a communist regime. It's not communism with Chinese characteristics, it's fascism with Xi characteristics.
Well, first, thanks for presenting, and quite compelling figures there. And it remains to be seen, because what I've been noticing is a lot of it is backwards looking, like what you shared, all the indices and such. And little wonder, at least from the outside, it sounds a lot better in the presses than what it might actually be on the ground right now. It's that if we're still relying on those backward-looking figures. So one is, how might we, despite the limitations, get better access to what is more current or even more forward-looking? That's one. And the second part is, and I've even encountered this not too recently, but even a couple of years ago, around 2018, 2019, from a colleague of mine who had just been transiting through Hong Kong even then when the protests were ongoing, and it goes back to the unclear interpretation, the very broad and honestly quite ambiguous interpretation of the national security law, that would someone, it could be any foreigner, it doesn't even have to be a Hong Konger, would anyone, let's say if you're even transiting through Hong Kong, would you actually be under jurisdiction of the NSL, since otherwise may be well advised that unless you know exactly what you're doing, to just avoid Hong Kong as a transit point from this point on.
You know, I want to make a short comment. Arbitrary arrest, and sometimes you don't know whether you can leave Hong Kong until you go to the airport. Even though if you go inside the plane, you hop inside, they could find an NSL police to grab you, and so you can go away. You know, it's as simple as that. So it's this. First of all, the NSL, it's something I think is caused the extreme makeover in Hong Kong. And secondly, I think those who are still in Hong Kong, they are thinking of leaving. This is worse than 1967. This is worse than 1997, because this is the current government. They try to show their performance to Beijing, and then they will do anything under the sun to make sure that Hong Kong becomes just like any other Chinese city. So it's bad for business. So that's why the diaspora community is rebuilding Hong Kong outside of Hong Kong. So if, you know, it's complicated. We are dealing with a very complex situation here, and there's no easy solution. But then we can see, like in a few years' time, whether the overseas Hong Kong community, whether we could stand up to Hong Kong and China. Now, when I say stand up to Hong Kong and China, I don't mean, you know, like to be their enemies, but we have to have enough power to say, for instance, if the Third World Hong Kong Forum, we can bring a business delegate, you know, bring contracts for them to sign, you know, like in exchange of, let's say, a Joshua Wong or a Benny Tai or a Jimmy Lai, then that's leverage, right? So we don't have that leverage now. And we know people are leaving, the US, the pension fund, right? They are not investing into Hong Kong and China anymore. You know, it's just in the news. So it's kind of sad, and maybe Anne can add a few more points.
Actually, if you look at a lot of Hong Kong civil servants that they retire, but now many of them, they can't take their retirement fund out. They try to leave Hong Kong, but they can't because their money is stuck in Hong Kong and they are not allowed to take it out. And so many of the medical personnel left Hong Kong that the Hong Kong government had to go to England to look for, you know, nurses and doctors and medical personnel. The problem is, even if they pay them double what they have in England, Hong Kong, very few people who live in England or in Australia are used to living in Hong Kong, where the housing is so expensive. And you live in a very small place for 3 times the cost of what you have to pay in England. So there's so much problem within Hong Kong with people trying to leave, that we hope that actually the Hong Kong government will recognize what they have done is actually killing themselves that way. And if they recognize that they are killing themselves, we hope that they will actually do something about it and not pressure on the people in Hong Kong.
You refer to the housing problem in Hong Kong. It's not just that now. It is since the colony. They have, I mean, the land policy. They are speculating in the land and investment. It starts from the UK for these housing problems. You can see that in USA now. In US also have the housing problems there. Housing problems here. The and many. Yeah. Okay, and then many are evict. I mean,
The housing market. Well, I cannot hear the full question, but all I can say it's, if you talk about Tai Kuching back in 2019, the standard 540 square feet flat, you could sell it in 2019 during the social movement for like 10 million honky. Now, after the enactment of the national security law, the latest news was that it was not a fire sale, but it was sold at 6.4 million. So the housing prices have dropped because of a lack of confidence and also job opportunities and also the rising interest rate as well. But people are sitting cash. People want to sit cash because they want to be liquid. This is something that's undisputable. So thank you very much, Fred, and also Anne for the panel, and thank you.
One last question, right? From here.
Oh, okay. Do we have time?
One last.
Okay.
There was a slide on the opinion polling for the Taiwanese presidential elections. And today it was announced that the two opposition parties are going to team up against the main party, the DPP. What is the implication of these two opposition parties teaming up, given that the numbers that you showed on the slide are higher than the DPP?
Is it RP and Gok Tai Ming? These two team up?
Gok Mandong and Mai Mandong.
Guok Mandong, so it's
I
policeman,
forget,
right? The police chief,
TPP.
the former police chief, and RP, right?
Go Wenze.
Yeah, and RP, so the medical professor, right? These two team up?
Yes, yes.
So that would be a tough fight. Anyone going to Taiwan on the 13th to vote? I'm going. Yeah. I think it'll be a tough fight if they team up, to be honest. Oh boy. Bad news, but yeah. Any comment on that? But thanks for pointing it out. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone? And last question here. If not, I really encourage you guys to stay until last one because we focus on a solution, okay, which is on our session 3. So feel free to stay and or ask any of your friends to come here, like, if they are having some session over in that real APAC thing. So we might just gonna have 15 minutes, all right, break. So we can come back at 3:40 p.m. Thank you.